So today we're going to be talking about writing a measurable learning objective. This is for my Foundation 620 class with Dr. Edwards. So we're starting with a quote by Robert Marzano, who is an educational researcher. He says that students who can identify what they are learning significantly outscore those who cannot. So that kind of sets the tone for what we're doing today and why this is important. The reason that learning objectives are important in the classroom, first, they provide our students with a clear purpose for what they are learning. Secondly, they direct the teacher's choice of learning activities. And another reason that they are important is they guide the teacher's assessment strategies. So we're going to talk today about what a learning objective should include. The first would be an observable behavior. So examples here where we want students to list or create or label or describe. A learning objective should also consider any special conditions. For example, like when we're doing our progress monitoring, we have our students have 60 seconds to read as many words as they can, or if we're doing our math fact fluency, they might have 60 seconds or 90 seconds to complete that assessment. And the third thing that our objectives should include are what will we consider mastery? Would it be 90% accuracy, or would it be 100 words a minute? So these three things need to be included in our instructional objectives. So today, the learning objectives for this PD will be that you will be able to identify the components of a well-written learning objective, and that we will be able to write a learning objective that meets that expected criteria. And we're going to talk about what that criteria is next. So we use the acronym SMART to help us make sure that we've talked about and met each one of these components when we're writing our learning objectives. The S stands for specific, and that is, what do you want to do? What do you want the student to be able to do? The M is measurable. How are we going to know when our students have reached it? Is it achievable? Is it a realistic goal for our students? And the T stands for timely. When do we expect our students to accomplish this? So to practice this, we're going to look at two different learning objectives. The first one is students will know the parts of a plant. Right now we're talking about plants in science. So we've been writing a learning objective for this standard. And we're looking at these 5 parts, and does this learning objective match our components? Our learning objective number 2 is students will find the correct sum of two-digit numbers in 4 out of 5 attempts. So we're going to look at the first learning objective and compare it to the second one, and let's talk about which one would be a well-written learning objective. Any ideas?
Well, the second one would probably be better, just because it gives an achievable goal and it gives us a timeline of when we want them to have it done. And
yeah, exactly. That's what we're looking for. Here we would probably need to be a little more detailed and maybe talk about how many parts of the plants, or how we're going to assess how they know what parts of the plants. We're going to ask them to label it, or we're going to ask them to define those parts of the plant. So in order for this to be a successful learning objective, we need to add some more details. All right, so to practice a little bit more, we're going to do a Kahoot. And if you'll get your device and go to kahoot.it, and while you're doing that, I'm going to pull up the game pen. Alright, so if you'll enter that game pin and then type your name, we'll get started. Okay. Alright, so we have 5 questions that we're going to look at to practice this, what we've talked about. So the first question, learning outcomes describe what the learner will be able to do by the end of the lesson. Good, that was one of the things that we had talked about earlier. Our second question, learning objectives are only intended for student use. Good, we talked about teachers can use that to drive their instruction and choose their learning activities, and also to decide how they're going to assess students. Okay, so which of these meets those criteria for a SMART learning outcome? Okay, good, and you would choose this because it tells how many. It kind of gives details about what we're expecting our kids to do. Okay, again, the second one is just more specific. It's not just any addition problem, it's the sum of a 2-digit addition problem. Okay, and this is kind of one that we talked about a little bit earlier, and I included this one so we could see how we could turn that into a more well-written learning objective, and that is being able to make sure we say the 4 parts of the plant. So that's something you can keep in mind while you're writing your learning objectives. Congratulations.
I did.
You came back to that last one. You got me. That's pretty funny.
Okay. Alright, so we're going to use the standards that are on our paper on the table to practice writing some SMART learning outcomes. So if you will, open this. These are 2 second grade standards that we have worked on. And the first one says, tell and write time to the nearest 5 minutes using AM and PM. So y'all are going to work together to write a learning objective that meets those 5 components. And then the second one says, identify the main topic of a multi-paragraph text. So we'll start with this one.
Okay.
So we would start with finding an action verb.
I'll give you it later. She took it from another class. Okay.
Alright, so what's an action verb that we could use?
Tell me right time, please.
I mean, I would say,
5 minutes using AM and PM. Or we're, you say identify?
yeah, here you go, identify better than that.
Okay, so students will identify
Students. Okay. The
Correct time 4 out of 5 times maybe, on analog clock.
okay. The students will identify the
Correct time,
correct
like 90% of the time on the analog clock,
time.
or 80%.
4 out of 5
Which is 80.
times.
On
Students
the
will
analog
identify
clock.
on an analog clock.
Okay, so the second one, another one we've been working on for reading. Identify the main topic of a multi-paragraph text.
So start with verb again.
And this standard's already identified one for us.
Okay.
So we say-
So,
I mean,
kind of says it right. The students will identify.
How will we measure it?
mm,
How will we measure if they're successful?
giving two supporting details.
Okay. Students will using supporting details. Okay.
And then do we wanna say with a certain percentage of accuracy with
With
With,
80%.
80%
yeah,
accuracy?
that's what it was on that top one.
Yeah. Okay, alright. So we took our standards that we've been working on and we turned those into learning objectives that meet those 5 components of a successful, learning objective and what we want our learning outcomes to be. Alright, so in your bucket, there's yellow exit slips on your table. If you could just fill those out and leave them on your table and I will collect them.
Alright.